You're watching Global Trade This Week with Pete Mento and Doug Draper.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to what I'm sure is going to be an instant classic. Did you hear that, Doug? I didn't call it epic.
I did.
I didn't call it epic. An instant classic of Global Trade This Week, brought to you by our friends at Cap Logistics. To learn more about Cap Logistics, visit them at their website at caplogistics.com. I am Pete Mento, and as always, I am joined by my super handsome, always dapper dressed, always, I'm going to go with work casual, business casual dressed friend Doug Draper. Doug, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing great, Pete. It's blue shirt day, so I appreciate you getting the memo.
Are we going to do this seriously, Doug? I'm not wearing blue.
Well, I can't tell. It's black, Johnny Cash black.
Yeah. I am wearing Johnny Cash black. I've got my Columbia. Always support brands that have supported me. Columbia, Jeff Tews, love you, buddy, out there in Portland, Oregon. But and I would say you're wearing purple. So is this like a pixel thing, or my old eyes getting worse?
Your eyes are getting worse. This is a nice blue, right out of the dry cleaners, looking good on a Monday.
You do look good. I'm telling you, man, business casual, always looking good, Doug. But we are very happy to be with you again for what is, I'm sure, to be another great edition. So Keenan is out skiing the backcountry, living off of bark, berries, some eggs that they found, and some stray errant mountain chickens, and pushing buttons for us out there. Yeah. But Doug, you have won the coin toss and you have elected to receive. So you're on offense first this week, and you're going to have the first topic. So go ahead and hit me, buddy. What do we got?
Awesome. So this topic actually comes from a good friend of ours, Mr. Mark Conrad Saxelby.
Mark Conrad.
Was Mr. M. Conrad Saxelby.
Doug, I've got to say, last week him sending us the video of him in the gym while he's listening to the show. I don't know. I was just waiting for him to tear his shirt off Hulk Hogan style. It was a little bit upsetting, but thank you, Mark, for supporting the show.
Yeah, you can't unsee that, unfortunately.
No, you can't.
So,
yeah.
But we were chit-chatting, and he came up with this topic, right? It's a great topic, so I got to give Sax the credit. And the topic was the crystal ball stability, and we were talking about that a little bit. And here's the gist of it, right? So I think everybody is still trying to figure out post-COVID. We talk about logistics, purchasing, trying to figure out what the consumer is going to be doing in the future. And it's almost like people are wanting to have a crystal ball and wait. Like, what do we do now? Do we pivot left? Do we pivot right? And from some experiences that we both had, it seems like we're trying to figure that out. So really, the gist of it, Pete, is that forget supply chain logistics. People, in general, they want clarity and stability in their lives, and they want it in their relationships. Kids need it, as you know, with kids, they need the stability out there so they can be raised properly. And supply chain and logistics procurement professionals need it as well. And we're seeing that, what do you do? Do we go left or right? Meaning, I'm going to put this in two categories, Pete. It's the cold trickle approach from Days of Thunder. If you remember that movie from 20 years ago.
Wow, I think longer than that, pal.
Yeah, the cold trickle. And that's whenever he was racing and there was some wreck on the track. And I can't remember, who was the guy that was his head of his team. But anyway, he said, hey, there's a wreck. Go around the wreck. You can drive through it. I know it in my heart. Drive through it, which basically meant just put the pedal down and drive through the chaos and see what comes on the other end. So that's one approach, is to say, you know what, we're going to try and we're going to move forward and we're going to do this thing. The other approach is, the other bucket is a old adage that some of our older listeners will know. It says, nobody gets fired for buying IBM, right? So you got reliability and innovation. So I think the crystal ball may not give you one direction or another, and that's okay, right? So you got the cold trickle effect, which just put the gas down, we're going in this direction, and and we're going to do something. And then the other take is, you know what, nobody gets fired from buying IBM. Nobody gets fired from taking a slower approach and analyzing it and going from there. So I think it's fine. Both of them are fine, but be deliberate about it, Pete. Don't just sit in the middle. So if you're the cold trickle effect and you just want to kind of say, I think we need to go here, and you're going to put the gas down and you're just going to drive through it, or if you're going to be a little more passive and make sure nobody gets fired for buying IBM. I'm good with either one, Pete. I'm good with it, but make sure you're deliberate in your decision, because the having instability is what we don't want. So the question to you, Pete, are you a cold trickle or a buying IBM type of guy?
Well, any economist will tell you that markets desire and long for stability, and they hate a vacuum. They certainly hate lack of information. What they all want is stability. They all desire stability. So I agree with you on that. And the more to the point, what they really, really hate is lack of information. And right now, that's what we're all longing for. So prior to TPM, as an example, we were all running around trying to gather bits and pieces, nooks and crannies on what was going to happen next. I know you were doing this. I was certainly doing this. I was calling everybody during TPM because I wasn't in Long Beach. I was in New Hampshire, and I was calling everybody. What's going on? What are people saying? And we were all getting information back, and we were all trying to find out, were these short sailings going to continue? Were we going to continue to see these canceled sailings? What was happening? And that lack of information causes people to bet. It causes them to consternate, It causes us all to go out into the marketplace and do things based on bad information, or sometimes good information. But one way or the other, we're speculating. And speculation is always done on good information and bad information, but it's speculation nonetheless, Doug. So many of us have been doing that lately, whereas before we all knew what was happening during COVID. No space, no ships, crap rates, way too much stuff, right? We were all working on the same assumptions, but we're back to where we were before, which is really not knowing what's going on. And that's getting better. It's getting better because we're getting better information. So we're in that in-between space right now. And to me, plow ahead. To me, it's take the information that you've had in the past. It's really depend on people that have been in this business before, that have seen what's going on. Armstrong and Associates, shout out to them. I think it's every month, Doug. I think it's every month. They put out a very detailed, extremely researched document that goes into what they see that's happening out in the marketplace. And they also speculate based on what's happened before. Is it always right? No. But they're confident in making their speculations based on what they've seen before and the information they have in front of them. And they also will tell you right there in the very beginning, past performance, is not always an indication on future results. But I'm very much a go plowing forward based on my confidence on what I've seen in the past.
Yeah. I was trying to get cute with quotes here, and I was like, okay, what are some quotes with stability? And there weren't a whole lot of them. It was all about, well-behaved women never make history type of thing, right? And you got to go for it and no regret. So, calculated. Your key thing, Pete, that is spot on is information. You need information to move forward, and we're kind of in. You could get information. You could come in and get McKinsey or some consultant, and they could tell you both sides of the story on what to do. It's the information that's key. So totally get it. I appreciate that.
My whole McKinsey, my feeling about McKinsey, man, I'm not a fan. So, but it's really what it comes down to is who do you get your information from? Are they a trusted source? But someone's got to make that decision. And I think Mark was really pushing towards that. This is not a time to sit there and overthink it. You're going to have to make a decision like that race car driver. You're either going to have to make that split decision to go around or to go through it, but you got to make a decision. You can't just sit here and overthink it. And this is a business where sitting on that critical information and not making a decision until it's too late will wreck a business. You got to Got to make a move. There's an excellent book. I can't recommend it enough to people in this business, by Jocko Willink, where it's called Extreme Ownership. And one of the things that he talks about again and again is fire and cover. It's a military tactic where someone's covering you while you're firing at enemies and moving. So, and the same is involved in our business. You're going to have to make decisions while other people are sitting there and considering what's going on. You're going to have to cover your people while other people are actually actioning. So, action. You still got to be making action. You've always got to be moving. You've always got to be making a move on the target and gaining ground. And I've seen companies. I've worked for companies recently that just didn't make decisions. They rethought it. They looked at the data for too long, and then opportunities pass them by. Don't be that guy, Doug.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we're on the same page. So moving forward, to use that, your first or your next up, my friend, your first topic. Let it rip.
It kind of fits with this, right? So there's a lot of BCOs right now, and for those of you who don't know, we get way too comfortable using terms in this business. And a BCO is a beneficial cargo owner, and that is a company that's big enough to negotiate their own rates. So a BCO is a very large exporter who has the ability to negotiate their own rates with a carrier. And these very large BCOs are out there right now negotiating rates with the carriers, and they're finding themselves able to negotiate extremely beneficial rates. So $1,000 40-foot ocean rates out of Chinese-based ports into the West Coast are common, which leads me to believe that less than $1,000 rates are attainable. This is all going to depend on the type of agreement that you're able to get to, terms that are in that agreement. So that doesn't mean that they're there for everyone, but they're there. And this also gets to what you and I had been, I suppose, predicting, which is that the unwritten alliances that were going on between carriers were going to fall apart. And I'm not ready to call it a war. I'm not ready to call it a rate war. I don't think that they're out there trying to stab each other in the back. What I think that is going on is that they're all aggressively trying to sell their space, that they're all out of the marketplace doing everything they can to ensure some degree of competitiveness. But I don't think that they're out there trying to sink one another, not yet. I don't think things are quite that dire. But we're back out there where if you've got significant volume and you're able to negotiate on your own terms as a BCO, you're going to find yourself getting some ridiculous rates. So for people that are out in the spot market, you're going to find those kinds of rates as well with NVOs and freight forwarders. This is a great year to not be under contract with a carrier. This is a great year to not be out under contract with an NVO. Like you said, man, speculation and change. This is going to be a fun year to be out there and have cargo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the one comment on that, Pete, is be careful of the undercoating. That may not be. So my point being, and we've talked about, the different connectors. So $1,000 just for that reference point to get to the port is all fine and dandy, but they're peeling back the intricacies of that, right? When you get to the port, let's just use LA, congestion, labor, fuel, regulations, the whole 9 yards, which just means check for additional fees and charges and deferment. So if you're out there negotiating, pat yourself on the back, but make sure you don't forget about the undercoating, because that could crush yourself when you're sitting in a boardroom talking to your boss about how kick-ass your negotiating skills are.
Yeah. Well, that's why I said, depending on terms, it doesn't say anything about free days. It doesn't talk about demurrage and detention. It doesn't, it doesn't say anything, about all those. It doesn't guarantee you anything about whether you're making it on the ship. You might have the best rates ever. You might not sail, man. So just be sure you know what you're negotiating and get involved in these terms. And I think this is also going to be an opening for some of the smaller freight forwarders that are out there as well, that do have good relationships with a carrier or two, that can get your stuff on a ship to actually make some hay this year. So this is going to be a fun couple of years, I think, for people that have done a good job of developing relationships to show some of their other services in dray and freight forwarding and distribution, as well as their technology to let that shine for their customers. It's going to be a good year to get yourself back out there on the street. I think some salespeople are going to have a good time reestablishing their brands.
Yeah, agreed. All right, man. Halftime. Obviously brought to us by Cap Logistics and Keenan pushing the buttons in the cave up in Breckenridge, Colorado.
Yeah.
You and I wouldn't be here without those guys. So Cap Logistics. Yeah. All right, man. I like your halftime. Why don't you go first on this one?
So, Doug, I get caught up in a lot of Netflix binges, and unfortunately, I came back from Mardi Gras, and that's been over this has been 4 weeks now. I came back from Mardi Gras with some kind of crud. I don't know if it was on some of the beads I got that were imported from God knows where, but I've been sick for quite a while. I'm just starting to feel better. I got some antibiotics, and I'm shaking it. But I ended up binging a lot of TV while I was laying around all sick. And I watched a show people have been talking about, and it's called Outlast. So, Doug, I know you watch some of the survival shows like I do. Have you seen The Outlast yet?
Nope, I have not.
Okay.
Briefly heard about it.
Yeah, I think it's relatively new, but I binged it all over last weekend. And Outlast is a team survival game where the idea is that you were dropped off in the middle of Alaska. They gave you some basic survival tools. And then as a team, you had to outlast the other teams. And it was for $1 million. So whomever was left in your team when the last team outlasted the others won $1 million. If there were 4 of you, you split the million. If there were 2 of you, you split the million. But there were precious few rules. And in something that made social media and regular media, as it were, people got pretty nasty. So one team stole another team's sleeping bags in a dastardly move. Oh, dastardly move. They stole the other team's sleeping bags. People stole each other's food. They sabotaged one another's rafts, And they're like, because there's no rules in Outlast. And I'm watching this. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Okay. So we're supposed to believe that this is as real as it gets, And I'm watching this. I'm like, no, this is a fatal flaw. Because if this was real and this was my friends, we would just kill all of you. Like if this was my friends and I, like if we were in our mid-20s, we would just go to your camp, like in broad daylight. I wouldn't even wait till the middle of the night, and we would just choke you all out, kill you all, take all your crap. We would go to the next camp and kill you all and take all your crap, and then the game would be over by 4. Like this wouldn't even be good television. Like we would just roll up on you and say, you're quitting now, or my friends and I are going to kill all of you. Like we are thugs. This isn't going to end well. Like we would be drowning people. I'd be waterboarding folks. It would be great television for one episode. But like this is not how this would go. Like if we're going to go that way, like if you can steal people's crap and be psychologically cruel to them, I'd give you one great episode.
Yeah,
that's about it. It would turn into like The Sopranos meet a bunch of hikers, and that's how this would go. I'd be breaking kneecaps and waterboarding people. There'd be folks hung up by their ankles from a tree. Like it'd be more like a horror movie than it would be a Netflix survival show. Maybe I'm writing a horror movie right now, Doug, but like you see where I'm going with this. Not as scary as they made it out to seem.
Yeah, well,
it'll flaw.
It's a Monday, Pete. If you're that fired up about this on a Monday, I do not want to see you later this week.
He's sitting here all worried she's going to take us off. I'm like, pick up a rock and knock her out. Like, what is he so worried about? I'm like, she weighs $105. You should be knocking her out. What's he so worried about? If you can't take her back and take her out with a rear naked choke, what kind of a man is this guy? Like, I was all kinds of angry about this.
Yeah. Crazy. Huh. Well, hey, before I jump into mine, I will say that if you're looking for a new show to watch with your significant other, I found a show called Shrinking.
Oh, it's fabulous.
Apple TV. Love it.
Love it. It's fabulous. That and the other one on Apple TV is The Reluctant Traveler with Eugene Levy. I love it.
Oh, yeah. My wife loves that one. So anyway, there you go. Free feedback on streaming. So Pete, this is one that's a little bit delayed from an event that happened first part of this month called Operation Stimulus. You actually spoke at the event. You know, COVID jacks up time and warps everything, but I think you spoke maybe 7 years ago or something. But it's COVID killed it for a couple of years. We bring in kids from all over the country getting degrees in supply chain logistics. They get a fictitious problem, a case. They come to Denver. They talk about their solution. They're judged. We combined it with a professional conference and some breakout speakers. The Denver Transportation Club had hosted it for decades, and this year Colorado State University has taken it over, and I think that's where it's going to land for the future. So, one, I'm glad it's back on the radar. I would encourage everybody to go to Colorado State Business School website to check out the details of it. Had a phenomenal keynote speaker, Jimmy Eberhardt, who started this company you may have heard of called Fluid Trucking. Great guy. I was really glad to be able to interview him. So here's the gist of it. Indiana University won the competition. First time they'd been there in a while. We had phenomenal attendance. It was great. And here's the cool thing, Pete, and hopefully this gentleman, I can't remember his name, I apologize. He was a student from Texas Tech, and I was just, shooting the shit with him over lunch, and he's like, "Hey, I really like your show." And I'm like, "What? Like, how did you even find it? You're a 20-something kid going through supply chain at Texas Tech." He's like, "Oh yeah, I love it. You and Pete, da 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 da." So it made me feel good that there's actually some kids, or maybe I shouldn't feel good that they're listening to us on how our industry is. This is the street smarts of the book smarts with our industry. But my whole point is I'm glad Operation Seamless is back. I'm glad that we have people listening to us. And I want to shout out to the Texas Tech crew and say thanks for listening and getting your perspective of our industry from Pete and myself.
Well, three shout outs to that. First of all, I was born in Lubbock, Texas, where Texas Tech is. So it is my hometown. Second of all, my mom is an alumni of Texas Tech.
Oh.
She is a Red Raider. And third of all, speaking, it was magnificent, man. I really loved taking part in Operation Stimulus. It was one heck of a program. So if anybody who watches, the professionals that watch this that are in the Colorado area, and I know we have a lot of them, if you're ever asked to take part in it, I cannot recommend it enough.
Yeah. It would be first week of March 2024. So anyway. All right, that's all I had to say. I should have made mention of that about 3 weeks ago, but thank you.
Better late than never, buddy. All right, what you got for your next one, pal?
All right, well, air, ocean, ground, air, ocean, ground. Oh, and rail. We haven't talked about rail in a while.
Always talk about rail.
So, there was some stuff that came out recently about the Canadian Pacific and the Kansas City Southern merger, and the official date that it's going to be inked is April 14th. So I was starting to think about it, and I was like, when did this all start happening between the battle between the CN and the CP, and who was going to take over Kansas City Southern? And that was all the way back in like third quarter of 2021. So it's been a long time coming. A lot of regulations, a lot of groups it has to go through, but. So here's, I'm not going to do a total recap of it, but CP bought Kansas City Southern for $31 billion with a B. Even with that acquisition, they're still the smallest of the Class 1 railroads, if you can believe that. But here's the deal. I love it, and I think that's got tremendous potential because it's the first rail line to connect North America, Mexico, the United States, Canada. It goes right up through the spine of the United States, and that hasn't been done before, and I think there's lots of opportunity to really take the rail industry to the next level. So I think that's pretty cool, and it truly is a big deal. All of the major leadership is coming from CP, so it'll be based in Calgary with the U.S. headquarters in the Kansas City area. And I was looking at the map, Pete. The last thing I'll say about this one, I was trying to get a map up here that what cities in the U.S. are going to benefit. And looking at the map, I think that as crazy as it sounds, Davenport, Iowa, in looking at the map, and I've not gone, extensive, but it looks like Davenport, Chicago, maybe a little bit of Milwaukee, but primarily Davenport, from what I've seen, is the connector area to get things slingshotted up into Canada. So I think I'm going to write into the City Council of Davenport and say, here, your new slogan to help with the growth of the connectors up there is get your ass to Davenport. So if you see that in some marketing promotions, Pete, that's where it comes from. I will take credit for that. But if you're in the rail industry, you support the rail industry, or you're just looking to move to Davenport, Iowa, and then get your ass there, because that's where it's going to happen here as this merger completes.
I'm quite certain that will never be part of the marketing from the fine people of Davenport, home to many of the great fighters of the UFC. By the way, I doubt that will ever be. Did you say 31 billion?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Wow. The bank that used to be Credit Suisse was worth just 8 billion last Friday. Yeah. That is a massive deal. It's incredible. To think that there hadn't really been one unified North American, Canadian, Mexican, like one railway that unified all of this continent is pretty incredible. Up until now,
it'll be interesting to see. Railroads don't move quickly, but hopefully we'll see some creativity, ingenuity to really, with the nearshoring and all the things that we've talked about, and how things are evolving with procurement and in sourcing. It'll be interesting to see if they can leverage that quickly and make an impact for everybody. So,
but that just puts it into scope, right? Just how large these companies are when you consider that one of the world's largest, used to be one of the largest, most prestigious banks in the world, just is dwarfed by the size of a railroad, which isn't even the world's biggest. That's incredible.
Yeah. All right. We always like to end with your final take, Pete. So I'm throwing the gauntlet your direction.
So a report came out recently by the Center for Strategic and International Studies that was asking the question that's been in a lot of people's minds. Well, I shouldn't say a lot of people, on a lot of nerds' minds. Why hasn't the free trade agreement between the United Kingdom and the United States been ratified? Because it's kind of a slam dunk. It's sort of a no-brainer. And why is it a no-brainer? It's a no-brainer for a lot of reasons. One of them being that the United Kingdom, now that it's outside of the veins of Europe proper, could really use the stimulus. The United States could really use the market for their goods, and vice versa. And there's a lot of synergy between these two marketplaces, and also for the great things that could happen regarding technology and e-commerce. And it turns out that there's a lot of reasons that you would not think. One of the biggest being Ireland. And today is the 20th. We just had a whole. I'm outside of Boston, and boy, was it just St. Pat's up here. So St. Patrick's Day pretty much extends through the entire weekend up here in New England, and Ireland being one of the main reasons that the entire agreement has not been ratified. So the reason for that, of course, being the Good Friday Accords. And when the European Union and the UK split, they had a real problem, because Northern Ireland and Ireland are two different countries. And so how trade transits across those now, one being part of the European Union, one not. So how do you account for the United Kingdom having an FTA with the US and Northern Ireland not? And this becomes a real issue with regards for trade. So that is actually something that is holding it up, because of the United States' desire to try to find a way to unify Ireland. Yeah, I mean, it's something that comes out of a Tom Clancy novel. And there's a small cadre of congressmen that are trying to find a way to hold that up. Also holding it up, banking regulations between the U.S. and the United Kingdom, agriculture requirements. As you're well aware, Great Britain and the United Kingdom have much stricter agriculture requirements with regards to biological requirements for the way that we handle organic and inorganic foods. But one of the biggest is immigration. Under the current writing of the U.S.-United Kingdom Free Trade Agreement, Americans and Brits would be allowed to work in both countries without visas. And that's a pretty big deal. So we'll see where this goes, but the time is ripe, and it will be a pretty big win for the Biden administration if it can get passed. But unfortunately, Congress is in its way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't understand why this hasn't been done. And here's my take on it. Just this simple kid from Kansas perspective on it, right? The UK separated, right? England separated, and I know there's different geographies, and I'm probably making certain people mad with my references. But if the US tries to negotiate as a collective, right, and not take it for face value, which is the whole reason that they separated from the EU, it's just going to get muddied and unnecessary noise, right? So my take is, if those congressmen try to force it together, to bring it all together and negotiate as three, not one, it's just going to get convoluted. And oh, by the way, the more we align with the UK, the better we're going to be positioned to deal with some of the issues out there with China and everything else. Our adversaries, if you will. So I don't understand the point of that. I think it's going to muddy the waters. There was separation for a reason. Negotiate the individual countries as a separation. That's my take. Quit jacking around and let's get something done. That's my take from the kid from Wichita, Kansas out there looking at it through my lens.
Yeah, I'm never taking you ever to an Irish bar in Boston, Doug. They might actually.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Why would I? You kidding me? I'd get stomped if I went into that place.
Yeah. But the long story short, both countries really, the United States and the United Kingdom really want this to pass. But this is the problem with foreign trade agreements and the president not having what we call fast track authority, because he's not able to just get an up or down vote. Congress is able to play around with the details of the agreement, and as such, we can have some futzing around by both sides. So we'll see. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, this will get passed. Ultimately, they'll figure it out, just like they figured out Brexit, and we'll work it out, Doug. We'll work it out.
Yeah,
we'll work it out.
Good. That's all right. Well, I think that's it. I think we just ran our course on another edition of Global Trade this week. Of course, Cap Logistics, want to thank you for the platform. Pete, want to thank you for your insight. I love it. The man in black out there in New Hampshire. Sorry I called it blue. But the most important thing, Pete, you got to remember for this episode is get your ass to Davenport.
Davenport, Iowa, man. Truly underrated town. I've been there. I've been there. Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening and joining us this week. And Pete, we'll catch you in 7 days, my friend.
See you next week, everybody. Thanks, Doug.
All right.
Thanks.
Take care.